Welcome back to Street Writers.
10 minutes of writing motivation, inspiration, and activation.
Take a swing at this.
Tips, tricks, and sleight of hand to power up your pencil and percolate your brain.
All right, we're going to talk about pipelines today. Yes, we're going to talk about keeping that filled. Because prior episode, we talked about a wonderful rejection letter, and really
more to come.
Heartfelt, yes, exactly. When you're categorizing your rejection letters, you're truly a writer. When you can figure out levels of rejection. We had mentioned, John Ketchum over at Film Minute sent a personal one. We got so close on a film we both worked on, and I was thinking, oh man, this is a bummer. But what always pulls me out is there's always the next thing.
Okay.
And I think that's important for a writer to know that this piece you're working on, you need to finish it, you need to come to some kind of closure and completion, but B, it's not your end all. There always should be something that you're thinking about doing or planning on, because what I find in my own writing is it's like reading a book. You're about maybe halfway through and it's a little bit slow and you're like, all right, let me get to this or whatever. But if you know there's another book behind it, you start reading faster to get to that other book. Okay,
so you're not talking about like multiple projects going at the same time so much as the next one's there, no matter how. And I kind of have a kernel of it,
right?
But I haven't really dove in deep.
Yeah, you may. In my case, I want to write about this short story I want to take on, but I'm not going to because I'm working on something else right now.
Right.
But that's the carrot.
Right.
Like, I'm excited about working on that, but my job as a writer is to finish what I'm working on now. Now, there are different types of writers who can kind of do a lazy Susan. Let me put a day in on this one and a day on that one and stuff. That's not me. I need to finish this one.
Right.
But it's easier finishing this one when I think, okay, I've put in my blood, sweat, and tears. My critique group said this. I reacted this way, and it's getting to a point. I move faster and more efficiently when I know right after this one, I'm going to jump on the next one.
So the technique, the tip here, is to have that pipeline, to think of your craft in a sense of having a pipeline of things that are there, not getting distracted by them, but also not just saying, this is my magnum opus, there is no other.
Right.
That you've got something that, I know I'm going to write a story about X.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to write a screenplay about Y.
Right.
Haven't started them yet, but they're there.
And that's your journal.
Pulls you forward.
Right, and that's your journal, right? So you see somebody in a restaurant and say, that's a very interesting character. And then the day after you think, what if, the world ended and that was the last person alive?
Sure.
So now you have a kernel of another story.
Yep.
It's an assembly line. There's more coming. And it makes it easier to finish the one I'm on.
Yeah.
And it also makes it easier when you get a wonderful rejection letter to say, okay, all right, this one maybe, but this next one, I know it's going to go through the roof and stuff.
But even in that one, what's interesting about that Minute Film Festival is you were thinking about multiple applications of that particular piece of creative writing and that creation. Because you made that film, what was the original cut, like 4 or 5 minutes?
Yes.
But then you were recreating it for that Minute Film Festival.
Yes.
And that's also something, one piece of creative writing maybe can also be a pipeline in its own right.
Yes.
So there could be an audio segment of something.
Yes.
There could be an animated kinetic text
And it's a good point.
thing of something.
Yes.
So one thing you create, once you get into a creative mindset, you can recreate it multiple times. They beat us to the punch.
Admiring the craft or just being jealous.
So like last time out, these are writers and creators I look at and I'm like, why do I bother? But at the same time, you get pulled forward by the opportunities here. So this is a bit of a twofer because this is an individual named Alan Watts.
Right.
So if you know Alan Watts, you know who that is. Got a marvelous rich English accent, which I will not attempt to emulate when he speaks. But he was perhaps best known as being a bit of a philosopher, a teacher, really introduced a tremendous amount of Zen thinking, even transcendental meditation thinking to this country overall.
Right, in the Western world.
In the Western world, really
from
brought
the
these
east
things
to the west,
forward.
yes.
So I came across this actually just this morning, and this was a bit of advice he put forward in writing about writing. Right. And it almost codifies, I think, the whole street writer's approach.
Right.
So I admire this, greatly. This is him. Think of it in an English accent or go find him, and put it in your own head. Advice? I don't have advice. Stop aspiring and start writing. If you're writing, you're a writer. Write like you're a goddamn death row inmate and the governor is out of the country and there's no chance for a pardon. Write like you're clinging to the edge of a cliff, white knuckles, on your last breath, and you've got just one last thing to say, like you're a bird flying over us and you can see everything, and please, for God's sake, tell us something that will save us from ourselves. Take a deep breath and tell us your deepest, darkest secret so we can wipe our brow and know that we're not alone. Write like you have a message from the king. Or don't. Who knows? Maybe you're one of the lucky ones who doesn't have to.
Wow.
I mean, it's just
I'm applauding here. That's
just
beautiful.
A punch right to the gut in terms of talent, ability to bring it forward, add character to it.
Wow.
And just huge green with envy there.
He can help us all fill our pipelines, right?
Exactly.
If that doesn't inspire you to write, maybe you're in the wrong business.
Exactly. Find another podcast, but send us another listener first.
Hit us with your best shot.
It's time to get in the ring with us or the coffee shop.
There you go. Dan and I I think we talked about it in a prior episode, we just finished shooting last week a film that I wrote and directed, and Dan starred in, or was one of the stars in. They're kind of a cathartic experience. It's like, I went into it and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have fun with this, and I do. I have fun, and in this case, I was fortunate enough to work with 3 great actors as the leads, and I had a great partner on the production side, Bill Barber, who's accomplished in his own right, and then some great friends that come in to do extras and stuff. So it was just all comfortable and stuff like that. But shooting a film is shooting a film.
And this one took a long time.
Yes.
I mean, you wrote this. I went back through the notes. You sent out the first draft on this April, March.
Man,
I mean, this was 8 months in the making.
Right.
Like,
and that was just the final script. It had taken me, probably 2 or 3 years to get it to there. The writing, seeing if it's going to be able to translate, getting the people, getting the production together and all that stuff. It's always a relief to get to the actual shoot. In this case, we had a wonderful place, Turning Point Coffee and Wine Bar in Stanford, and we had about 4 hours of light at that place. Like any filmmaker, we did a ton of takes and stuff like that, but we were racing.
12. That was perfect. Can we do one more? Yeah.
It really was a fun experience, plenty of energy and a lot of motion in the shots and moving around. And then it's also fun in that watching actors in the real world, we can't rehearse and leave the day job forever. So to get actors to come together who I know are pros, that after a take or two just start to find their own rhythms and start to find the characters and then also start to play off each other. Right. And they start doing the stuff that I talked about, which is when you get to a point where you're learning from the actors.
One moment sort of stuck out for me, which was, I remember asking you earlier in the day, you had written that line about, you're going to get 5 to 10. My thinking was on the page. Right. I didn't read that you were talking about prison time, essentially. But then making the motion with my hands, going from, 50%, and then 5 to 10.
Sure.
It occurred to me in the moment that how that translation of something that didn't work on the page actually worked okay in the motion of the visualization. So from a writing point of view, those are the things that you're also discovering or thinking about.
That's a lot of the fun for me. I felt the same way. I was like, I love what he's doing with his hands.
Right,
here.
The hands carried it.
And it carried it. And your character also got bigger as you started exploring it. And Jeff did something early, when he was playing with his eyes, and when you can see a good actor's eyes, and he starts to get comfortable with it.
Yeah, he was
That is when you're like, okay, this is why I do this. And that's the whole thing about the pipeline. That's going to get me, the next one. That's what's going to be fun.
Right. So contact us at streetwriters.podcast@gmail.com. with your questions, comments, material you're working on, or tips on writing.
Tell your friends to listen and their friends too.
Take it to the streets.
And fight to write.